So what you're seeing right there, we're on the Arauca River along the Colombia-Venezuelan border, and what you're seeing right there is the flag of the FARC. I'm here in Colombia because Colombia is facing the largest immigration crisis of its lifetime. I'm talking about the Venezuelan migration crisis. But most people, when they think about the Venezuelan migration, they think just about the migrants. But it's much more complicated than that. When you go to the Colombian-Venezuelan border, what you'll find is international narcotics trafficking, international terrorism, transnational organized crime, espionage, intelligence, external actors, Russia, Iran, China, Hezbollah, Cuba, and a geopolitical scenario that is unlike anything we've seen in Latin America in our modern history. Gracias.
Soy el comandante de la aeronave y capitán. Les damos la bienvenida al vuelo EasyFly 9148 con destino a la ciudad de Arauca.
Bienvenidos a la ciudad de Arauca. Por su seguridad les solicitamos permanecer sentados con el cinturón de seguridad abrochado hasta tanto el avión llegue a su sitio de parqueo y las señales de que cinturones se vayan a apagar.
We've arrived in Arauca City, the capital of the Arauca province in eastern Colombia on the border with Venezuela. Arauca is a conflict zone that sees almost daily attacks against the Colombian military and police. Brutal attacks such as bombings, IEDs, kidnappings, landmines, and murder. The almost 190,000 people that live here in the Arauca province live in constant fear because of a variety of violent cartels and terrorist groups that impose their own rules and social control.
Anunció el despliegue de fuerzas de inteligencia para que ayudaran a localizar estratégicamente en donde están tanto las disidencias de las FARC como el grupo armado del ELN. Este es el informe y esto fue lo que dijo el presidente Iván Duque.
Están cometiendo crímenes también en Venezuela y crímenes en Colombia y pretenden mimetizarse en esos cruces fronterizos. El mensaje es claro. Vamos a enfrentarlos como lo hemos venido haciendo hasta ahora con total contundencia en el territorio y estaremos denunciando también la connivencia, la protección que le ha brindado el régimen dictatorial de Nicolás Maduro a estas estructuras criminales.
Shortly we'll be meeting with top military commanders of Colombia and take a ride along with the Colombian Marines to patrol the Arauca River and get a sense of the rising tension on the border with Venezuela. This is a Colombian Marine base. It's called 20 de Julio. It's a very historic base here in Colombia. This is the Arauca River that separates Colombia and Venezuela. On this side, we're obviously on the Colombian side. As you get further in, you're on the Venezuelan side. The defense minister is here. He just gave a very, very important speech to the. These aren't just representatives of the Colombian Marines and Navy. You also have representatives of the Colombian Army, Colombian Air Force, and the joint commands that are here because they're facing an important moment in its history, and there's a conflict ongoing here in Arauca between various criminal groups as well as, well, obviously groups in Venezuela that are supported by the Maduro regime. So we will briefly speak with the minister once he returns from this river route reconnaissance, and hopefully be able to record it. If not, we'll be able to tell you about it, because it won't be that long. It'll be about 10-15 minutes, but some important remarks that we're going to talk about about the threat networks that we're seeing, and obviously what the minister is seeing here in Colombia as well.
Okay. We're here in Rio Arauca. We're now on the river. We're there are many different fast boats that they have on here. The Colombian Marines. It's kind of Marine Infantry Battalion 50 that patrols the river. We're going to be passing under the international bridge that connects Colombia to Venezuela. There's all kinds of different illicit trafficking along this river, which includes narcotics, contraband, and perhaps other types of illicit material. So what you're seeing right there, we're on the Arauca River along the Colombian-Venezuelan border, and what you're seeing right there is the flag of the FARC. It's as clear as day as they're declaring their territory along this river. As far as symbolism goes, it's pretty clear the presence of illicit activity and illicit actors on this side of the river. Coronel, esa bandera de la FARC que estaba colgado aquí, para ti, ¿eso qué representa?
Bueno, eso puede tener muchos significados. En primera instancia, una señal clara y evidente de la presencia de las FARC en el territorio venezolano. La protección que el régimen de Maduro, no desde ahora, sino desde hace mucho tiempo, le ha brindado a este grupo de criminales y terroristas, también puede representar o representa una afrenta, un desafío de parte de este grupo de criminales, porque si usted se da cuenta, está colocada desde el lado venezolano, casi pues en el lado venezolano, pero es una clara provocación de colombianos perversos, de colombianos malos que están en el otro lado amparándose detrás de un régimen corrupto y criminal para cometer acciones contra su misma patria, contra su misma nación.
Unfortunately, we had to cut our trip on the Arauca River short because other platoons of Colombian Marines patrolling further up the river found a dead body in the water laced with explosives. But that was in September. Now, things have gotten worse. In 2022, the new year began with at least 23 brutal killings in the Arauca province, prompting Colombia's military to deploy additional security forces to the border. But what I learned during my time in Arauca is that there is a larger strategic move at play, one that involves Venezuela, and as you will see shortly, it also involves Russia. So the question we have to ask is, how does the Arauca border conflict benefit the Maduro regime? And why is Russia really helping them out? The answers to these questions begin with understanding the strategic and historical relevance of Arauca, symbolized by the name of the international bridge connecting Colombia to Venezuela.
Cuando el traidor José Antonio Páez, que cruja en su tumba, que aquí está, no debería estar aquí desde mi punto de vista, el traidor José Antonio Páez en este panteón.
As soon as I arrived in Arauca, I could tell this region is more dangerous than the rest of the country because of a heavy presence of cartels, terrorists, and other armed actors. Arauca is the home base of the ELN, but at the turn of the century, the FARC increased its presence to expand the booming drug trade. I'll explain. In the late 1990s, while the ELN was financed mostly through its illicit oil and gas operations, the FARC was knee-deep in the cocaine business. At the time, Arauca was not known to be a hub for cocaine trafficking, but that changed after Venezuela's Hugo Chavez came to power and formed an alliance with the FARC.
La FARC y el ELN no son ningunos cuerpos terroristas, son ejércitos, verdaderos ejércitos.
But let's fast forward to 2016. The Colombian government and the FARC signed a peace deal, which is supposed to end the half-century armed conflict as FARC members officially disarm and demobilize. But that doesn't happen, at least not entirely. Various FARC dissident groups who either did not join the peace deal or broke away from it began forming new fronts and rebuilding its armed militant structure throughout Colombia. According to the Colombian army, as of this year, in 2021, the FARC dissident groups have more than 2,500 armed combatants and almost 1,800 residual forces distributed in 38 groups spread across Colombia. In essence, the FARC dissidents have now started a new armed struggle, what they call the Second Marquetalia, the name of the birthplace of the FARC.
Lo que viene sucediendo en Arauca es un hecho premeditado de las disidencias de las FARC, Frente Décimo, por parte de alias Ferney, que viene desarrollando una práctica atroz de llevar colombianos al otro lado de la frontera venezolanos, asesinarlos y luego traerlos dejados de este lado de la frontera. O traer, como en este caso de algunos de los 7 que han sido encontrados por el delito de homicidio a este lado de la frontera, de traer extranjeros, venir aquí a Colombia y dejarlos aquí a este lado de la frontera.
When talking to many of the Colombian military commanders and police officials, it's evident that things are not as they seem in Arauca. Let me explain. The situation in Arauca took a turn for the worse when on March 21st, Venezuela's Maduro regime launched an offensive in the Apure state on the Venezuelan side of the border. This provoked a direct clash between the Venezuelan military and the Martin Villa 10th Front of the FARC, led by dissident leader alias Gentil Duarte. The epicenter of this armed conflict was in La Victoria, a small town on the Venezuelan side of the banks of the Arauca River. The clash between the Maduro regime's military and the 10th Front of the FARC lasted months and led to several Venezuelan soldiers killed and some captured but later released.
La otra noticia nos llega desde Venezuela, donde se registra un nuevo enfrentamiento armado. Los combates serían entre las disidencias de las FARC, que comanda alias Ferley, y la Fuerza Armada Nacional Bolivariana.
It also forced a migration of more than 4,000 Venezuelans fleeing to Arauquita, a town on the Colombian side of the border. But here's the complex part. The 10th Front of the FARC is not part of the Second Marquetalia, which is the other faction of the FARC dissidents. Remember, the Second Marquetalia is allied with the Maduro regime in Venezuela, but the 10th Front, led by Gentil Duarte, is not. This means that the war in Arauca features 2 factions of the FARC fighting each other, one alongside Maduro's military forces and the other attacking Maduro's military forces. Many analysts chalk this up to infighting among criminal groups for control of the cross-border illicit trade. That could be the case, but that analysis ignores the strategic benefits that the Maduro regime reaps from the Arauca conflict.
Si nosotros tenemos una guerra con Colombia, se la vamos a hacer en su territorio. Comete un error de cálculo, creer que la guerra va a ser en territorio venezolano. Pónganse a creer.
Benefits that only come because the Maduro regime started an ongoing war in Arauca among irregular and illicit actors that has intensified over time and created chaos on the Colombian-Venezuelan border. After having many private conversations with the region's police and military, it is clear to me that the Arauca conflict is more than just FARC infighting. It provides the perfect pretext for the Maduro regime to deploy a stronger military presence in the Apure state on the Venezuelan side of the border. This includes militarizing the Guasdualito airport with Chinese-made K-8 combat planes and Russian-made Orlan-10 unmanned aerial vehicles, which are the same reconnaissance drones used for electronic warfare that have seen action in Ukraine, Syria, Libya, and in the Nagorno-Karabakh border conflict. But more importantly, the Arauca conflict has started a disinformation campaign to establish a false moral equivalency between the democratically elected Duque government of Colombia and the illegitimate usurper regime of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. On May 13th, a spokeswoman for the Russian Foreign Ministry called for the Colombian government to meet with its Venezuelan counterparts as she praised the Venezuelan armed forces for fighting against drug trafficking and irregular armed groups. The irony is that the Maduro regime and many of its high-ranking military leaders are indicted for being drug traffickers.
Maduro's government have addressed the Colombian authorities with the initiatives, yet he received no response. We call Colombia to show the goodwill in terms of these initiatives. We are pretty sure that this will be in line with the interests of Colombia.
While we were in Arauca, Russia's P-18 mobile radar system in Venezuela was actively monitoring and surveilling the border region. For a bit of context, Russia has provided Venezuela with upwards of $11 billion in military armament since 2005. In the last few years, Russian military advisors, technicians, and contractors with expertise in advanced Russian weapons and intelligence systems have been steadily arriving in Venezuela. Part of their mission is to install mobile technical radio reconnaissance units inside Venezuela to boost the asymmetric combat capabilities of the Maduro regime. The point of the Russian communique is not to stop a conflict, but rather to use an armed conflict to manipulate and change the balance of power on the Colombian-Venezuelan border. Sensitive sources we spoke with on the border, who have well-placed informants inside Venezuela, say that there is intelligence proving that the Maduro regime itself provided the order to FARC dissident leader, alias Ivan Marquez, to begin the Second Marquetalia by taking control of Arauca.
Yo le he dicho a la Fuerza Armada Nacional Bolivariana que conteste contundentemente y que limpien los cañones de nuestros fusiles para contestarla en el plano que tengamos que contestarla.